Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today for this Domestic and Family Violence Lunch and Learn session for the New England region. My name is Sandy Vincent, and I'm from the PHN Education team, and I'm joined today by Dr. Colette Horrigan, who is a Central Coast GP specialising in women's health, as well as most recently providing medical services for women's and children's refugees. We're also joined by Erin Bliss, who is a Safety Actions Meeting Coordinator with the Women's Domestic Violence Court Advocacy Service based in the New England region. And this service can be accessed directly with referrals from primary care, and we're going to talk about that today. And also joining me today is Steph Sass, who is a colleague from Primary Health Network working in this program. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. And a few things to let you know that we are recording this session, and the recording will be available for access in a couple of days' time. As attendees, your camera and microphone are automatically switched off. Please do use the questions box if you want to send some questions through to us. And we'll address that at the end of the session. And an evaluation will come to you at the end of the session, and we really appreciate your feedback. So please do send that feedback through to us. And with that, I would like to hand over to Colette to start the presentation.
Thank you, Sandy. So today's talk is just a brief overview, and I really strongly encourage you to do the full 2-hour training that involves a whole practice for the first session and the clinicians for the second session. So do consider doing that because it is available if you'd like. Now, next we're going to just have a look. Thanks, Sandy. We'll just go to the first, thank you. We're going to look at why domestic family abuse and violence is relevant to primary care, because we're introducing this as a new concept to primary care, because traditionally primary care hasn't really been that involved in the management of victims and perpetrators and affected children. But when we look at it, when we look at the highest burden of disease for women aged 18 to 44, and we compare it to things like alcohol use, tobacco use, obesity, workplace hazards, illicit drug use, physical inactivity and childhood sexual abuse, the results are quite startling. So next we're going to look at those numbers. So as you can see, in terms of a risk factor, domestic family abuse and violence is actually at the top at 5.1%, and that is the impact of illness, disability, premature death for women in this 18 to 44 year category. So it actually is a greater risk factor than all the things that we normally consider, such as alcohol abuse, tobacco use, physical inactivity and obesity. So it really is a strong indicator of poor outcomes. So, we do need to consider this in primary care. And particularly for our Indigenous women, the incidence is 6.3 times higher. So that is then for non-Indigenous women. So it actually costs the health system billions of dollars. So early intervention is what we're aiming for in involving primary care. Now we're just going to have a look at the next slide, which is why, another reason why primary care should be involved. So when we talk to victim survivors and we actually ask them where they would like to get their support from, well, the first, for current domestic violence and abuse, the first group is family member or friend. But interestingly, the second most popular group they turn to is actually their GP. And so victims actually want us to do this work. Now, the reason why GPs are the next go-to group, more so than the police or any other counsellor that they're seeing to do this sort of support work for them, is because their GPs are trusted. They've got a rapport with them. They know that their GP cares about their health. Often the GP is seeing the whole family, providing that holistic care. And, if that confidentiality that the GP provides and that safe space in the surgery is really valued by victim survivors. So now we're just going to have a look at how common this is in primary care. Now, for every full-time GP, they're actually seeing 5 victims per week. And when you talk to GPs, they're just startled by this number because these 5 per week per full-time GP just aren't being identified in primary care. So what we want to do is we want to put it on the radar and make it visible in primary care. We don't expect GPs and practice nurses to be domestic violence specialists. We have our specialists out there. All we're asking is that they identify, support, and then they link them as soon as possible with our wonderful domestic violence specialists. And Erin will be talking to us a little bit later about the service that she offers, which is really an amazing service. So now we're just going to have a look at what GPs can do in this space. So first of all, just spotting the signs, and that is having an awareness. So for instance, that child that's bedwetting, that's anxious, that doesn't want to go to school, the person that keeps coming to you with chronic headaches, hypervigilance, insomnia. You know, sometimes we can pick up on the clues. We can also see, you know, physical things. If they have bruises in various stages of healing, then that's another clue. You know, when the woman comes in with the black eye, no, she didn't accidentally walk into the door. You know, trying to try and pick up, because what's happening with these victim survivors is that they feel a lot of shame, they feel a lot of guilt, and they don't come in saying, oh, by the way, I'm experiencing domestic family abuse and violence at home. They actually present with usually their physical symptoms. So we have to be very good at picking up the clues that they're leaving for us. Starting the conversation. Now, it's quite okay as GP or practice nurse to say, look, how are things at home? It's not prying, it's not going to offend them. In fact, if there was nothing going on at home, the patient would think, wow, that GP is really caring to actually ask that question just to make sure that my welfare is okay. And by starting that conversation, it opens the door for that victim to disclose. It's giving them permission to talk about what's really going on in their life. And then once we can identify that, and we can do a quick safety check, a quick safety plan with them, then we actually then let them know that we have a wonderful specialist team available. And they've been around a while, they're very experienced, they're very knowledgeable, and we can link them for support. So, you know, it's sometimes in medicine, you identify conditions and you feel very frustrated because there's nowhere to send them to. This is a free service. They don't need money to attend it. They're there Monday to Friday, and if it's out of hours, then there's a domestic violence line that you can also call, and they all work together. So I can only speak, you know, I can't speak highly enough of this service because I've used it many, many times, and it's actually worked extremely well, and they've looked after my patient, they've kept them safe, and they let me know what's going on, so the patient doesn't disappear into the ether. So I can, you know, do really consider this. You don't have to ring around refuges and counsellors and things on your own. If you refer into this one referral point, they will do all of that for you. They'll organise the legal aid, everything. They'll organise the case manager. So it saves you a lot of time just making this one referral, and, you know, who knows, you might have saved that patient's life. Now, we're just going to move on to the next slide, which is early intervention. Early intervention is something that primary care physicians are really used to. We try and do early intervention with our cholesterol management, with many, many conditions, with early intervention in managing diabetics. So it's really no difference to applying early intervention to domestic family abuse and violence. And Asking a patient with interest when they know you care is always going to end up with a good response, even if they're not ready to disclose that visit. Perhaps they'll disclose the next visit. Keep that conversation going, keep that door open. So next, we're just going to have a look at how you do that. What does that look like? So there's 4 simple steps. You just ask the question. Now, general questions, and then you can funnel it down to spend, depending on the response. So how are things at home? And then also, if they are coming in with insomnia, chronic headaches, you can make them reflect on that. Is there anything else happening which might be affecting your health? And often at that point, they'll say, yes, I've been under a lot of stress. You can ask them, oh, what stress? Do you mind if I ask what stress you've been under? And usually they will start opening up to you about what's going on. If they answer, oh, my partner just gets angry at times, it's quite okay to explore that and say, well, what happens when your partner gets angry? And then also statements such as, sometimes partners use physical force. Is this happening to you? And they will see that you're caring, that you're not judging them, that you just want to help them and understand what's going on in their life. So when you listen without judgment, things like, I hear you and I believe you, because keeping in mind the perpetrator will often say to them, no point telling anyone, no one's going to believe you. No one, everyone's going to think that you're the one to blame. So it's really important to tell them that you do believe them, and that you do care about their welfare and that you want to help them and support them on the journey to work this issue out. So validating their feelings. And I often say, look, I'm so sorry that this has happened to you. And thanking them for telling me, because I know it's a huge thing for them to open up to me. It's not easy for them to disclose this to someone. And just keep reinforcing, it's not their fault. It's the perpetrator's fault. He has chosen to use abuse and abusive language towards the victim. It's not the victim's fault, because he'll often say, and often, not always, it can sometimes be a female perpetrator, but sometimes the perpetrator will say things like, you did this and you made me angry, so that's why I did it. That's your fault. And sometimes I hear it often enough, they start to believe it. So it's really important we say, no, this isn't your fault. It's the perpetrator's fault. Now, then the most important thing, once we understand what's going on, encouraging action. So that's when we ask them, do you mind if I ask you a few more questions to keep you safe? And on our action plan, we have those safety questions. And there's also a guide for safety planning. So they have a safe person, a safe way of communicating, a safe means of getting out of a dangerous situation, a little safety bag where they've got, medications, perhaps passport, a little bit of cash, so they can grab the bag, they can communicate with the person they need to be meeting, or it could be a neighbour, they just need to go down the store, they might have a code, 3 rapid knocks on the door, the neighbour will let them in. But they need to formulate this plan with you, because if something does happen and they're in crisis, they will not be thinking about it. Now, this action plan, I just want to briefly go through it with you. The first page really is all you need to refer on. Now, you can refer by picking up the phone. You can send this through medical objects, and a lot of the local coordination points will also take faxes and emails. But it's really important that you get this through as quickly as you can, particularly if the victim is at risk. Do it immediately, alert them. They will then alert the police and get all the safety factors in place for you. So the first page is basically the details of the patient, the children, whether she's pregnant, and the ages of the children, and also a safe time to ring. Is it better for them to ring or to email? So once we know, like he might be working 1 day a week, and she might say, look, Wednesday's the best day to ring. Can you ring between these hours? So that they know when to contact her. And she will receive a call to you within 24 hours. Now, we also get the name of the perpetrator, whether he's living in the house, because that's an important thing for the local coordination point to know. And then if you can, because unless there's imminent risk of harm, then we do need consent. So at the bottom of the 3rd page, you can get her to sign it and just send that through as a minimum. Now, the 2nd page goes through all those safety questions. And so you can actually go through these with your patient, because it's important to ask them and that we don't assume that they're going to be safe. We need to ask them about safety factors. You know, do they feel safe to go home? Are things escalating? Has there been strangulation? Because unless we ask, sometimes they don't volunteer this information. So this plan is to guide you, because we don't expect you to remember all the questions and how to safety plan. So on the left is the safety assessment. At the bottom, it tells you what to do depending on the response to those questions. And on the right is just a quick safety plan you can do. Now, keep in mind, when you refer to the local coordination point, they're going to go through all this in far more detail than what we do. But we're just giving them a guide, and then the local coordination point will take over. Now, the 3rd page is just the patient plan. And the patient plan is working out what that patient would like. Are they at the point they just want information? Are they ready to leave? If so, it's very important we make sure they're safe when they leave, because that's a very risky time. Most women that are murdered have actually left their partner within 3 months of them being murdered. So we need to make sure that they're safe if they are planning on leaving. Now, our goal is not to get them to leave the perpetrator. Our goal is to keep them safe and link them with support through the local coordination point. So the management's really easy, because the local coordination point does it all. So you don't have to sort of worry about individual things. They'll do everything. So they'll take over the management and they will give you feedback. Then, you know, you might consider referrals. For instance, if the child is developmentally delayed, if there's a speech delay, you might consider referrals to paediatricians, to speech pathologists. So that's something you can consider. But in terms of the safety of the victim, it's just a local coordination point. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to hand over to Erin to explain what she does with this marvellous service. So thanks, Erin.
Thanks, Colette. Hi, I'm Erin. I'm the Safety Action Meeting Coordinator in the New England. So what we do under the WDV CAS is we'll receive a referral through. Generally, we have 24 hours to make that first contact attempt. And then we have 5 business days to try and make at least 3 attempts to contact. Once we make that contact with a victim, we complete risk assessments and safety plans that will ascertain their threat level as well. So we deal with like the at-threat ladies, as well as there's escalations to the safety action meeting. The safety action meeting, that's where all victims, male and women, male and female, they all go to the safety action meeting, and we all come together with government and non-government agencies to put in place some actions to keep the victim and their children safe, if they have children, and to keep the perpetrator away from them as much as possible and reduce that risk. A part of all of that is completing the warm referrals to different services. And that stops them from having to kind of look for services and things like that. We'll do all of that for them. And we also provide court support and advocacy, especially around those AVOs. So whether there's children involved, if there's no children involved, we need to make sure that whatever legal protection they have still allows them to live, and co-parent if that's something that needs to happen as well. Which now we actually have the family advocacy service here as a part of our WDV CAS. And so that's all support around the family law aspect of domestic and family violence too. We also in the New England have our Aboriginal specialist workers and our multicultural specialist workers. So if we do have any victims who do identify as either Aboriginal or called, we do have those specialist workers who are absolute experts in those aspects of life too. So I think that's everything. But yeah, if I've forgotten anything, please sing out, Colette. But yes, you can refer through to us through Medical Objects, pick up the phone, email, fax, whichever is really easiest for you and your patient at that time. Yeah, getting her the support that she needs is crucial.
Thanks, Erin. So I really encourage you to do further training, and it really will increase your confidence and your capacity of your general practice, because it's a whole practice approach, because your receptionists are the eyes and ears of the waiting room. They might see things, they might witness the abusive behaviour, and when they get into the doctor's room, they might be nice to each other. So, you know, the receptionists need to report anything that they think is unusual, or if a perpetrator rings and keeps trying to get his partner's details, then that's also a bit of a red flag. So this is where you work together as a practice, and also your practice nurse can really assist the GP, because if the GP's got the perpetrator and the victim in the room, the practice nurse can take the perpetrator and say, look, I'm just going to take you for a blood pressure check. So the GP can actually talk to the victim about what's really going on. And it's not just, you know, we talk about heterosexual relationships, but look, any relationship, there can be domestic family abuse and violence. So, you know, just be aware of it in any relationship. And particularly, you know, keep in mind that 1 in 3 victims will be male as well. Now, I'll just give you, I've just got a few minutes, so I'm just going to give you a little example of a case that I had that where it worked really well. I had a woman who had to flee her home in the middle of the night. She felt unsafe. She had 2 young daughters, primary school age, but she knew that he wouldn't harm the children, but she just felt she needed to get out of there. She left in the middle of the night. She went to a friend's place, and then she contacted me the next day. So I got her in and had a talk with her, and she told me all the abuse that had been going on. It's the first time she's actually disclosed what had gone on in their marriage. And she left with the clothes on her back. Her partner, her husband, had immediately shut down her access to credit cards. She had no cash on her, and she didn't want to impose on the friend and bring trouble, because the partner was starting to contact the friend when he found out where she was. So when she was with me, I actually rang the local coordination point when she was there, so she could also be part of that conversation, because it's really important to involve the patient or the victim on this journey as well. And she was so relieved, because she found out she could get victim services compensation, and that would cover a bond, and she could get some rental. They also offered her legal aid assistance to actually, you know, get some access to her children and to help with working out custody. They gave her a case manager that she could talk to, and anything that came up, for instance, something did, the perpetrator had sent 2 people, 2 of his friends, to harass her, and she was very, very intimidated. She called the police, and they came and spoke to them. So then the local coordination point said, well, where she was renting, they were actually going to put up some security cameras for her and just up the protection for her. And, you know, it was amazing, because she went from being almost suicidal, thinking there's no hope, there's no way I can work this out, I'll never get my children back, I can't afford to live. And then with all that help, she turned around immediately. Suddenly that, you know, lid lifted, and she thought, wow, with all this help, I can see a future. She's very happy that she's escaped that relationship, but she's even happier now that all this support is available for women. And she is just so impressed because she said, look, as a victim, you just don't know what's out there to help you. And you're in such a state of turmoil, there's no way you've got the capability of researching it for yourself. So to be able to literally just hand her over to the local coordination point and say, look, she needs help and she needs help now. Things happened within 24 hours. It was so fast. You know, she was also linked with victim services counselling, so she could have weekly counselling. And victim services counselling is really important because they can get 22 plus hours, so they can start off with weekly rather than putting them on a mental health care plan. So all this information, which often we don't know in primary care, is given to the patient through our local coordination point. So do contact Erin and her team because they can really assist you. And I know in your area that it's important because you've also got a lot of migrants in your region, you have a lot of Indigenous people in your region, and the local coordination point caters for all of that. You know, they deal with everything, they even deal with disability. So you don't have to think about them going down different pathways according to whether they're Indigenous or not, whether they're disabled, whether they're, you know, culturally diverse. The local coordination point is really a one-stop shop for all of that. So please make sure that you utilise them.
Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you very much, Colette and Erin. And we actually have a great question from Mary. So I wanted to be able to share that question with you. The question is it possible to get a version of the referral form not for best practice medical director if a practice is unable to use it, you know, sort of softwares in the community? So if you don't have best practice or medical director, what version of the referral form can you use?
You could use a printed version of it and send it off. Erin, are you aware of any other software that can be used to send these referrals through?
Not any other software, though we can, I mean, if they just print off the action plan and then fax that through, we can definitely take that. We also have like our standard generic WDV CAS referral form as well. I'm not sure if that's okay with the PHN to use, but we can accept anything really. An email with, you know, some basic information that would be captured on that referral form as well. Mainly her details and his details is really what we need to put it in the system, because we can't go back and edit his details once it's in. But we're easy to have referrals sent through to us in any form, as long as we get that referral so we can pick it up.
Because I know before our practice manager downloaded the template, I actually printed it off and just filled it in and just sent it off. The only advantage to be able to download the template is it'll self-populate and save you a bit of time. But certainly, yeah, just print it and fill it in and send it off. Or if you really get stuck, you know, just ring Erin and just talk to her and let her know about the referral.
The 1-800 number that's up on the screen at the moment, that rings every single phone in our office. So it may not be me that answers, but anyone can take that referral. And they'll probably forward it to me if they don't action it on the spot. But yeah, any way is fine.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again. We are exactly on time. So I might say thank you very much to both of you for joining us today. That was really an excellent presentation. And reminder that this recording will be available for to be watched later on. And please do complete the evaluation forms with us. That would be awesome. Thank you very much. And it reminds me to say have a very good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.